Tim Neighbors,
Present.
Dr. Giardini,
Present.
Dr. Bill Gorski,
Present.
Dr. Julie Morris. She probably will come on, and I think that's everyone.
Jay.
I'm so sorry. Jay Ware. Okay, I'm sure that
And me.
Wendy Bennett, the advisors, that's who I left off. So sorry. Okay, and then we're going to have as a guest today, Steve Chapman is going to join us for the first agenda item, which is going to be the budget, preliminary budget for 2021. And Paul Carpenter is on. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so we have the August meeting minutes. I know that Danielle sent them out to everyone.
Yes.
Okay, is there any?
Yes,
I
I have a
move-
correction.
Okay, you do have a correction, all
Yeah, I
right.
do. On the second page, under E, the model, it says the community support system framework was developed in 2977. I believe that's supposed to be 1977.
I think that's a good correction. So, okay, thank you for that. That tells me you read the minutes very carefully, Linda. Thank you for the update there. Any others?
I move they be approved.
Okay, I was going to ask for a motion.
A second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay. Any public comment? I have not heard that anyone is signed in to offer public comment. So moving on down quickly then to the budget update. And I think, you know, since Ed will be joining us, I know that he called me yesterday, concerned that the meeting was yesterday, and I reassured him it was today. So he is planning on calling in for sure, if not zooming in. We had a meeting regarding the $45,000 budget from the county. And Dick Kunert, myself, Jason, and Ed were on the call, and Dr. Gorski was unable to join us for that. Also, the sheriff joined us, and his deputy chief joined us for that particular meeting. And so we discussed with Steve how this should be handled. The other person, very important person that was on the call was James Keller from the Public Health Department. And he actually is going to assist Ed and also Dr. Gorski with the budget going forward. And so they need that budget for 21 by mid-September. And as Mr. Chapman offered to be on the call today just to help us and discuss how the budget should look. But I do know that Jim Keller sent a template for the budget to Dr. Copeland yesterday. So it's not going to be that sophisticated, just like the $45,000 was not. But what's happening is that the health department, once they have our recommendations for a budget, that will be just a line item. But we do also, we found out that they have separated. Dick, did you want to talk more about this? You want me to? Okay. They actually gave our, we have a line item, Fund 196, and it's a separate code for the Mental Health Board and the funds that come in from the tax revenue. So we actually, and we have a separate department code, which is 496, which, you know, it's going to be helpful for Mr. Keller at the health department too, because he's able then to just make sure that, you know, our funds coming in from the tax revenue would be segregated from, you know, the whole health department budget. And so today, what we wanted to do, and hopefully Ed will join us quickly, is just talk about what we know that we will be needing funding for going forward. The other good news that I can share with you is that the approximate dollars that Mr. Chapman gave us to work with in terms of revenue coming in from the tax would be around 13 million. And we thought it would be much less than that, but he said to use that as our estimated revenue. And then he also informed us that there was a new law passed. It won't go into effect until January, and we won't see the proceeds from this until April. But the mental health and substance abuse referendum, that the sales tax will benefit from this new law, which will pick up sales tax from internet purchasing. So all the Amazon and everything in our area, that will come into Winnebago County. So that's going to be extremely helpful. Dr. Morris is joining us, I see.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. How are you, Julie?
Good.
Good, welcome. So I think, we won't even know what that amount of money will be. And like I said, it won't come until next April, but that's positive news, at least in terms of dollars. So today, I guess what I would like to do is just talk about known expenses. And one of them would be the continuation of the R1 contract. And then the second part would be liability insurance for our board. And Paul, maybe you could just give us an update. I did get from Steve Chapman, I got some information that maybe going with the county isn't the best way. What have you heard?
Steve raised a good point that the county's general liability insurance does have that $250,000 self-insured retention for general liability purposes. The issue that the carrier had raised was the relationship between the Community Mental Health Board and the county, because it's sort of it's really an independent body. So that's what they were checking on, and I don't really get any answer yet, but that they were concerned that it's not, since it's not really a subsidiary of the county the way various other committees or whatever are, that they wouldn't be able to add them to the county policy for that reason. So I think it's probably a good idea to explore other alternatives.
Okay, that's good to know, because I do know we have some other options, and maybe Jason, as we go along, that's an agenda item by itself. So I'll let you speak to that, Jason, when it comes up. But the good news is I see that Dr. Copeland joined us, and we're on the budget topic right now. Ed, to put you on the spot, do you want to just discuss a template and what we need to, today we want to just kind of reach an understanding and acceptance from the board as to what, categories that we know for sure in terms of expenditures. And I already explained that one of them would be the R1 contract, and the second one would be our liability insurance. And then the third one is also debatable, but we need input from Paul on this as well. And that is whether or not, as a board, we need to retain an attorney other than you, Paul, or whoever is representing the state's attorney's office, because that could possibly be conflictual for you. And so what is your opinion on that, Paul?
I guess I'm not so concerned about the conflict issue. The Community Mental Health Act, though, does specifically allow the mental health board to retain counsel. The state's attorney has a similar relationship with the Board of Health, where we represent the Board of Health, but they also provide a stipend to, so that they're paying for our representation essentially. And we have there's a couple other departments that provide a specific stipend to the state's attorney's office for specific representation. And I haven't talked about that with Marilyn, but at some point that's a possible, we thought it was important to be here to make sure that the startup went smoothly, that the Open Meetings Acts were complied with, that the appointments and everything were complied with. And so that's what our, why we wanted to make sure that we were on board at the beginning, making sure everything got set. But as things go forward, it's possible that, that we'd be looking for some compensation for our time representing the board. And I think that Gus mentioned it when we were setting up the technology stuff, that there's certain things that they are happy to help with, but that they would want some compensation for. So
So these are expenditures that we should definitely include in our budget. Who does it is one thing, but the fact is we're gonna have to pay for
I
it.
would be surprised if
Mhm,
that
mhm.
was the case.
So it's the technology as well as the legal, as well as the insurance, and then we would have the R1. Ed, do you want to speak to the form and the template you received? And
So, good afternoon to everybody. Sorry, I had difficulty picking the right Zoom to zoom in on, but James Keller, after our meeting, he sent me a template. I've forwarded a copy to Marianne. I'll forward a copy to Jason, as well as Dr. Gorski, since he's on the finance committee with me, just to sort of lay out how things have been done up to this point. If I understood correctly from the meeting we were in, they really would like to get some kind of at least placeholder in place for their budget here within the next 2 or 3 weeks,
right,
recognizing that, things can change and all those types of things. But we do have the template. I'll forward it to those who would like, anybody else who would like to see it for that matter. Matter of fact, I'll just send it to the whole board just so you can
yeah, that's
see the
helpful.
template. And then
That's-
we have to nail down what we're doing literally right now, and that is just come up with the categories and figure out how we want to present it to them so that they can get going on their process.
Correct. Wendy,
So, Ed, do we have to be specific? Do we have to have, I know there are like sub-budget items in the county budget. So the broad category is whatever the number is they've assigned us, but then there are subcategories. Is that correct?
your audio.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'll try to send, I'm going to try to send this template
Okay.
right now as soon as I can.
Right now. Well, so my question is, how specific? Can we just say administration and say, X thousands of dollars? Or do we
Tim-
have to break it
Tim
down?
maybe can answer this. Tim?
So what we have to do, we could be general right now, and then later on, as we go on and find out the detail, we can make budget amendments as we go on. But right now, they just need the generalization as we get started. And then as we go throughout the process, we can make budget amendments with the money that's allocated in the certain sections.
So in other words, we could do, whatever, is it $15,000 a month right now for R1? We can be specific about that, but then have a broad category that says legal representation, liability insurance, technology support services, and just have a lump. And then as we get specifics, let's say from IT in the county or from the state's attorney's office, then we amend it. Is that correct?
Well, right now, we got a general idea, so we know we got a general idea. So say we get 15,000, well, we'll say we get 10,000 a month for IT. You know, it's 12 months in a year, so you know you put the budget in there for IT for 120,000. And then
Got it.
as we go out throughout the year, we detail what we did with that budget.
And Tim, since the majority of our dollars will be going into RFPs, and that's a general category, that's going to be after all of our data review, data analysis, determining what kind of need and what's the biggest impact for the dollars in terms of mental health and substance abuse in the community. But that all comes under RFPs. That's how the money will be actually applied for. So is that category, Steve Chapman seemed to think that was something that would be all right to just generalize in that way right now.
Right, he's more versed at it than I am, so if that's what he says, that'll be,
Okay,
that's good.
Bill.
Yeah, so if in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we need to have this template figured out, we actually need,
You're
I
right.
guess you'd say, a bid from the county for legal and technology support services and a quote for the liability insurance within 2 to 3 weeks, if I understand it.
I mean, at least approximate dollars for
Approximate.
that. And that's why we did put the insurance on today's agenda. Where does that fall in? I was gonna, it comes in next. So Jason, maybe you want to be able to talk about the liability insurance and how we could go about this other than the county and what approximate costs we're talking.
Yeah, so a few options would be we could try to procure it potentially through an insurance provider that may already be serving some of the committees that are part of Region 1. So we could look at that option. We've had also, I've recently, for some of my, volunteer nonprofit work, gone through the process of getting that type of insurance for a nonprofit board that I sit on. So I've had some recent contact with 2 different insurance brokers that we could certainly get quotes for. In terms of the cost, it's hard to say if that would be the amount of money that's being managed here. I doubt that it would be comparable to a nonprofit whose budget is less than $50,000 a year because of, the potential additional liability that would come with such a large amount of money. But certainly, what the amount would be, it's hard for me to give an estimate, but I think I could probably follow up and get quotes pretty quickly if you were requesting that.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, that makes sense. Appreciate all of Jason's help. The other couple of questions I had on the revenue side, Steve Chapman has estimated the 13 million, but we don't know that yet. And now we have potential online sales revenue that we don't know. So for purposes of this template, are we supposed to guesstimate that?
He said to use 13 million, if I'm correct. Ed, did you hear the same?
Yes,
He said use that number. So
Mhm.
theoretically, we have R1, we have technical, legal, insurance, and the entire rest of it is grants through the RFP process. I mean,
Exactly.
that's sort of it. The only other question, I'll shut up after this. The only other question I had is there, I don't know what it would be. Maybe Paul would know, or is there any conceivable scenario in which the legal department of the county would be conflicted? And do we know if other comparable boards around the state or in our area, have they sought their own legal counsel or not? I don't know what the scenarios would be. I just wonder if there are any.
Yeah.
There are conceivable ways that there could be conflicts. So the state's attorney's office, is the legal advisor for various different county elected officials, departments. And so occasionally there's conflicts with between those departments. And when that happens, we have to obtain outside or have an outside counsel appointed to represent wherever the conflict is. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is I'm not sure, or I mean, there's possible, the conflicts are financial, I guess, if one department thinks, or if somebody thinks that that they're entitled to more or to revenue from the mental health tax, then I guess, there could be a conflict there. So,
Okay, appreciate that.
sure.
And
But
something,
regardless, what Paul said today is significant. Even if the county were to continue, there's an expectation we will pay them. So either way, the expense for an attorney should be in our budget going forward,
Right.
because we're going to have to pay someone. So, and then Jay or Tim, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo what Paul said about the attorney. So what the county board does generally, like the state's attorney, is good to represent us in the general circumstances. But if we get, like what he said, a conflict, when we come up to the moment where we have a conflict of interest, that's when we will seek other representation. And it depends on who's the conflict of interest with. So sometimes they could still represent us in that conflict of interest, or we have to seek representation from somebody else. And the state's attorney's office is good at determining who needs to get the special representation.
Okay. So that's all helpful information. So I think, one thing I want to clarify too, that we keep saying there's $15,000 for R1. R1, that is not, will never equal 15,000. It's definitely below that. Even if we used every hour that we have the possibility of contracting with R1, it would never come up to that amount of money a month for Jason. So I just want you all to know that we're not spending the $45,000 only on that. We'll definitely have some funds left over. So just to clarify that. Any others? Okay, Jason.
Just if you're noting in the comments, Steve will be with us in 5 minutes, so we can continue the conversation.
But
or
that,
circle
yeah,
back.
that's going to be helpful too. So one other thing that I would like to say about this in particular, this today was a discussion and just kind of an understanding and agreement. But I guess what I need to know is, do we need to have a special meeting once they develop the template for board approval before it goes to the county board, or, that health department would have it in their budget to present to the county board? But how does that work, Paul?
Yes, there should be a meeting with an agenda item that says approving the proposed budget.
All right, so we may have to have, given that this is due mid-September, we're going to have just a quick meeting to approve the finalized budget template.
Right. I think that would be wise. And I think that would be required actually to be in compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
So we need to schedule that before the meeting ends so that we would have a quorum. Yes, Bill.
Is this a calendar year budget, or is the county fiscal year different? And then, did I hear you correctly, Marianne, that it would be April next year before the funds are realized in totality?
For that, but the actually, right, go ahead, Tim. I can't hear you.
I was just gonna say, give a suggestion for the meeting as far as next week. Just in case we have any edits or anything we need to do, so they can have it beforehand. Because I know with the county board, we had our county board meeting last week, and we have a special meeting tomorrow for the budget, and the earlier the better. So the quicker we get the budget done and those edits, the quicker, the better off we'll be. So I didn't want to put it off too far, but probably next week or
Yeah, and it will not be a long meeting. It would be just for Ed and Bill to present and then us to approve. So, and we would need a quorum. So that's basically what we would want, unless, somebody is suggesting changes. But we could even, at that point, say with the changes that in fact, then it's ready to go.
Right.
So, okay. So I just wanted to clarify that, and we will make sure that we set up. I'm thinking that if you're recommending, Tim, next week, I don't know what Friday would be for people or what Thursday would be for people, and if a morning or an afternoon, and remember, it's going to take a very short while, but it's really going to be important to have enough people. Does anybody have any suggestion for that timing? And Bill and Ed, can you get it done by next Thursday, do you think?
I think it just sounds like it needs those estimates from the county for those services. And then,
Yeah,
a more, what the ongoing estimate from R1 would be. And then my question about is this a calendar? Is this a 2021
Oh, yeah.
January budget, or is it starting in October, or what's the time frame of it?
our budget correlates with the county budget, which begins in October. Is that correct?
Yes,
It's an October 1
October 1.
fiscal year.
October 1.
Okay.
And that's when the initial revenue comes.
Yeah.
Will start in October.
Right. Oh, and that's another major thing too that we found out on the call. For me, it was news that as the tax money comes in, it comes to us monthly. So it's not going to be $13 million at the beginning of our, fiscal year. We are just going to have to really develop a trend, seeing how much money comes in every month. And so in the beginning, we may have to think of RFPs that, are really more reasonable in terms of dollars that would have great impact. But, these bigger kind of investments may not be able to come until the second year that we're, doing this, because we really don't know, as Bill pointed out, how much revenue we're actually going to be dealing with. So these are all things I don't know. In my mind, I thought we would just get 13 million, whatever it was in the beginning of the year, but it doesn't quite work out that way. Okay, so Jason, did you want to get, or you could be helpful to Bill and Ed in terms of getting a quote from the IT at the from Gus in his department to find out what that is, and then and then in terms of legal, Wendy, do you know what in terms of retaining an attorney, how we would budget for that?
Let me ask a few questions, and Paul and I can talk and see, because I know like the Carrie Lynn Center, I don't think we have a line item for legal.
Mm-mm.
But they've always had someone assigned to do the legal work, so we can come up with something, and he and I can talk later and get with Ed and Bill.
So long as they get it by next week,
and it's a guesstimate at this point, so
right.
So we'll just come up with a number and
Okay.
an informed guess. How's that? And let's try, and Paul, we can talk later today or tomorrow.
Jason?
May I ask what type of technical services the board is using? Everything we're doing at Region 1 is included in our service fee. We can provide a Zoom link that would be Open Meetings Act compliant. I mean, what do you have? You just basically all have an email account is there a cost? I mean, do I just need to find out if there's a cost associated with that, essentially, with having an email account?
And then also the website would be through the county.
Okay.
And
Okay,
one
So-
other thing
go ahead, Paul.
on that, so technologically, the other thing is, once the website's up, it's not a problem, but the clerk's office has been posting the agendas
Right?
so far, but once the website is up, those agendas can be posted on the mental health board's website, but they would like to see that happen sooner.
Yeah. I bet.
All of those services, just to let you know, I mean, if the board chose to include as part of Region 1's service, there would not be an additional charge for that. We have committees that meet with open meetings compliance, and we have spots for all of those things on our website that could be added without additional cost. And similarly could manage the content on the website if you wanted to have it on the county website. So I'm just putting that out there for you.
Well, that's something for the board to discuss. I don't know how others feel about that, but if there'd be no additional charge, any thoughts?
Sounds great.
I say we let Danielle weigh in on it also, because she's already responsible for the content. You know, maybe she may want to help or want to still continue to manage the content as well.
Tim, just to let you know, Danielle and Jason have been in communication.
Okay.
So go ahead, Jason, you probably can add more.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for her, but I will, because we did talk about it. And, she was definitely happy to have our support on that and to utilize Region 1, at least for now, to get that up and running. I think that she felt that would help her out, and that she maybe didn't have a significant amount of time right now to put into that.
Okay. So is there a motion needed, or Dick, did you have? Oh, I thought your hand.
Actually, I was going to make a motion that we take the offer from Region 1 to manage these pieces that we've been talking about.
Any discussion?
What's the specific motion?
The specific motion was that those pieces of technology that the board needs right now to use, that they be furnished by Region 1.
Meaning the web page.
You can, I'm sorry, I'm not good with the specifics that we just got through with this discussion, but there were 2 or 3 things that were outlined that Jason said that were easily within the resources of Region 1. And it makes sense to me anyway that they be in one house.
I think I'll second that, but I'd like to have those items kind of laid out here, identified.
Well, for one thing, it would be notifying the clerk's office, or actually the clerk's office wouldn't have to be notified. The meeting would have to be published 48 hours prior to a meeting to abide by the Open Meetings Act. The second thing is that the Zoom link would be actually controlled by R1. Is that right, Jason? You would have, why don't you lay it out?
Yeah, okay. So the way that we do open meetings here is that we post the meeting publicly on our, at our physical location, and the meeting agenda is posted on our website more than 48 hours advanced. And then if anyone wants to attend the meeting, they come here in person, and there is a room available for them to watch the meeting and provide public comment during the public comment section. It would not be the same as the Winnebago County in that it would not be a live YouTube link. It would be a physical option to attend the meeting. And then we would provide the Zoom link. So that would be what we could do.
And where
for
is
the
your
open
physical
meeting.
location, Jason?
It's in the old Morrissey building right next to where the library used to be and is now being rebuilt.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim,
So, Dick, do you mind if I reword the motion?
Not at all.
So the wording of the motion I will put forth is to have, I make a motion to have R1 get access to the website to manage the help Danielle manage the content of the website. So that's basically all we're looking for, right? Help manage the access for management of the website.
Well, and also manage Open Meetings Act.
Well,
And,
that's
yeah, the
managing
Zoom
the
meeting.
content of the website.
so that would include all the Zooms and whatever.
Mhm.
And
I
you
second
tie
that.
it to the county website, correct?
If you would like us to manage the website on the current page that they've built for you on the county, we can do that, and we can post the meeting agendas there. We can also, if you wish, create a committee with all of the committees that are listed on our website to put your committee there and post your agendas there. So you can choose either option or both options, and we can have the two linked to one another.
I think both.
I think it's necessary to keep the county because people associate this with Winnebago County. And I think it's important that we keep both.
Can I just add one other
Go ahead, Paul.
thing on the technology thing? The minutes also need to be posted after they're approved.
Yes, right. And we've discussed that because we have not posted our meetings, and we were going to after this meeting. Yeah, we talked this week. I learn something new every day as I'm into this, but yes, our meeting minutes will be posted. So, okay, any other discussion, and do we need, okay, we have the motion right now. We have, anyone's, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I just had another thought, Marianne. I'm supportive of this conceptually. I'm wondering if, given Tim's wording and Dick's wording, if another alternative action here would be for Jason to put together, because I'm sure Jason has sensed what's behind this motion, and put together what R1 would do, how it would link with the county, and simply get that information to Ed before we talk at our meeting. And that frankly could be another closure agenda item for this very brief meeting. Is this is how the IT thing's sorted out. This is what R1 does. It's compliant with what the county needs to see, because it seems a little confusing right now. And maybe with
I agree.
just two people, Ed and Jason, talking, probably could figure it out and bring us back something that would clarify any confusion.
Excellent idea,
Right.
in my opinion. Kim.
So the way it's set up now through the county, the website is on the county's
Platform.
database or on the county server. So they're looking for somebody to grant permission to have access to that. So right now, Danielle was the one that we granted permission to have access to. So right now we're voting to grant Jason access to that website. Now, if we choose to have a separate website, the IT department can still put a link on the county's website to portal it to the website that we have separate. And so it doesn't matter, but we already have a domain with the county. So because we established that at previous meetings, right now we're just trying to get Jason permission to get access to the website that we already have a domain with the county.
Okay. But that, it should not interfere with us, as Bill has laid out, that we get a fuller understanding exactly of what R1 will provide for the board in terms of technology. I mean, which would, and then the link could be made then back to the Winnebago County domain, or whatever is the correct terminology for that. Gus, you're on this, so I'm asking your expertise a little bit here. Is he, oh, I see Steve Chapman. Okay.
Yeah, Steve and I are sharing the Zoom.
Good.
What was your
Good.
question of me, please?
All right. Tim, do you want to?
Or maybe if you want to have Mr. Chapman go first and get that out of the way.
Okay, why don't we do that? All right. So Steve, thanks for joining us. I know you had trouble getting on, but we appreciate you being
I had
here.
a meeting up myself, so it was interesting. So.
Okay. Well, Ed, do you want to kind of explain to Steve what we've talked about at this point in time now? Board?
Yeah, we had a meeting, I think it was last week or week before. I don't know, what time's gone pretty quick lately, but relating to the budget, and also relating to procedurally how we need to go forward. The budget amendment that was before the board, I believe was for the 45,000, was approved by the county board last meeting, and it that particular budget amendment's been set up in our Munis system, and with a specific code and so on. I think Jim Keeler over at the health department would be the one processing the bills. They come through Mr. Copeland or whomever. But we are in a position to go ahead and pay the bills, and that once the funds come in from the state, presumably sometime in October, from that first month of July, then we would reimburse the county back probably once we spent the entire 45,000, whenever that happens. And so, and then go forward from there. As far as the 2021 budget, our fiscal year starts October 1st, and we're actually laying over the county budget Thursday night. It's kind of a preliminary budget. There's a lot of discussion and holes in the budget right now that we have to get firmed up between now and the time that they approve it. But presumably, if the board comes up with some sort of preliminary budget for your activities for the next year that we can incorporate into the final document that's approved, I believe it's September 24th is the meeting. That way we don't have to come back and amend the budget and so on. If necessary at a later date, if it's, I presume that this first year is going to be kind of a learning year anyway, in terms of how you're going to spend your money and what kind of monies are going to come in. I believe at that meeting, I indicated to Mary Ann and Reverend Copeland that, the county's public safety sales tax is a 1% tax. The mental health tax is a 0.5%, which the base from which the sales are made is the same. That particular tax is not put on titled vehicles, titled boats, things such as that. So when you buy a new car or buy a car, you don't pay that particular tax. And again, the county doesn't receive anything from that also. That's just part of the law that was put in way back when. But again, without good information, and also with the fact that, you know, we've had the COVID and all that, I think we're estimating between 13 and 13.8 million in revenue, but that would be over the course of the year, starting in October, and then pretty much going on to the following October, because of the way that the accruals work and so on. So again, that's probably 13 million on the low side, which gives us public safety sales tax revenue of 26 million and 13.8, which is about 27.6. So you know, I would feel comfortable with those numbers. Once we see, there may be some shortfall, or not shortfall, but reductions in those first few months because of what was going on with the COVID and so on. But you know, people seem to be out spending money again. The other aspect is there's a new law that was approved back in, I think, June of last year, which goes into effect January 1st of 2021. What it's trying to do right now, when you buy an item, let's say through Amazon, you pay a sales tax on it, but it's pretty much a use tax where you pay 6.25%. So that particular money doesn't assess the additional taxes that are assessed, you know, for a brick and mortar type store. Let's say you buy something at Target, you're going to be paying 8.75%, which is 6%. Well, 5% goes to the state, 1% goes to the municipality or the unincorporated county, 0.25% goes to the county, 1% public safety sales tax goes to the county, the 1% road tax goes to the city, and the 0.5% mental health tax goes to the mental health board. So what this particular law is going to try and do is make those internet sellers and so on, the Amazons, the Targets, et cetera, pay that full amount of tax, the 8.25% that would, or 8.75, I'm sorry, that would be required. So hopefully that will make the revenue numbers for you know, the special taxes that we have go up, because what they're trying to do is pretty much have the internet sales, you pay same taxes as you would for the brick and mortar stores here in town. So it may take a while for that to filter through, but hopefully that'll, they're saying that, you know, those particular specialty taxes like that we have should generate additional revenue. So.
Okay. And you had asked for our budget by mid-September, but you're saying the meeting is on the 24th.
Right, but we're having the finance committee, any amendments that we're doing, which really this would have to go through the finance committee. So, and they'll probably be meeting the week of the whatever that is, 16th or somewhere in that area. So.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Chapman? No? Well, we thank you for your time today.
I think Wendy might have had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
That's okay. I just want to make sure. So if we just use broad categories, so, you know, let's say 75,000 for administrative costs, including technical support, legal support, liability insurance, management, and then, you know, $13 million subject to requests for proposal. Is that going to be enough for the finance committee?
Well, I think probably at this point in time, it's probably gonna have to be. I don't think we're gonna have, you're not gonna have time at this point in time to specify what it is. I guess that's a discussion that I'll have to have with the finance committee, but the budget document that we have kind of, breaks down the accounts by, personnel, by what we call supplies and services, which is, supply categories, other professional services. That's probably where most of your programming would go under that particular category. Capital, you probably wouldn't have any capital. So it's kind of broken out, and that's the document that Jim would put together. But as far
And he
as
sent the template too, Ed.
Pardon?
He did
Okay.
send the template, so.
yeah,
Okay, so if we call our request for proposals, professional services, that's going to be detailed enough for the moment till we start asking for checks to be written.
yeah, I mean, ultimately it would be processed through that particular budget. But again, I have not had any conversations with the finance committee in terms of what they would require. I will do that and make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Okay, all right, very good. I see Tim.
Tim,
Steve, I was gonna ask, could you tell us the difference in the way we have to budget and allocate money as far as being a government entity versus a non-for-profit entity? Just some of the big
Well-
points, not none of the small nuances, but some of the big differences.
Well, a lot of it's the same. I mean, we are required to maintain separate funds for different activities, different fees that come in. Some of the court fees are restricted in terms of what you can use them for, like the automation fund, things like that. So we have to have funds set up. The mental health tax fund has been set up separately from the other funds. Right now, we have about 150 different funds that we take care of for the county. So the expenditures all run through our Munis system, and that the bills are paid through the county. Any bills that would be paid would be done through a county check.
okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Okay.
And
No
where,
problem.
one final thing, where would they send the, to whom should receive the final projected budget for us? Where does that go from?
You should probably submit it to Jim, and then he'll forward it on to me.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you
Good
so
luck.
much.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and since Gus is here, we'll tap him next.
Hello,
Jason, hello. Jason, do you want to just summarize what
Steve.
you talked about in terms of R1?
Yeah.
And
Sure. I just was really asking for clarification on what type of quote that you would like for technical services, because some of what you're asking for really actually is already included in our service agreement. And so it's not even that we need to add it to the service agreement. It's already in the service agreement for website content management and also for Open Meetings Act compliance. So the question was what type of IT services you might be interested in needing from the county and what the quote would look like. And I think what I heard was you each have website accounts that will need to be hosted by the county, that you would like to have a web page on the county's website that will be hosted by the county. And so those would be the two I think that we'd be looking for, unless there's anything else that anyone can think of in addition to that.
so
comments from me?
Yes, that's for you. I mean,
Great, great. Well, mentalhealth.wincoil.us. I set that up for you and created an appropriate section in our Microsoft Exchange environment. And I think when we did that, I said at some point in time when you've got revenue stream, we'd want to bill you for that. Now, if R1PC is doing something different for you, I'm not aware of that. So if you're going to be hosting with us, Jason, with Winnebago County, there's going to be a cost to that.
right.
Yeah, I
That's what
think
we
that,
wanna
I
know.
think they want you to host the website.
Okay,
And we would just manage the content
gotcha.
as well.
And when it's time, Mary Ann, we'll work out the dollars on that. I'm not worried about it at this time. It's de minimis for me.
But I realize that, but at the same time, we're putting our preliminary budget for 2021 together.
Ah, so you'd like some numbers.
Yeah, so actually it's like almost tomorrow, but
All right.
you know, we need just an idea to enter into the budget. It would help.
Okay, so domain, email, and let me ask this, you know, what I know about my customers, they have an insatiable appetite for technology. And so if we start looking in 6 months down the road, I don't know if you're going to be renting someplace and you're going to put in, you know, hire people and you're going to be putting in a network and all that happy stuff within the next 12 months.
No, we won't be doing that.
Won't be doing any of that.
No, we're not hiring anybody else. No,
All right, then.
not yet. To my
well,
knowledge.
Well, yeah, I'm just a guy who tries to look into the future once in a while.
Well, that's true. You know, it's important to do.
All right, then I'll get you a quote that what you consider should a budget for domain hosting and email. Okay, I'll send it to you, Mary Ann.
Any other requests? That's great. Or you could send it to Ed Copeland because he's working with Dr. Gorski to develop.
All right, Reverend, I'll shoot it over to you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Gus. Appreciate your time as well.
My pleasure.
Thank you. So, Jason, at this point, I'm going to turn over the environmental scan to you. You can update everyone.
Sure. So we've received, we sent out 135 surveys. We had the incorrect contact information for 11 to 12 agencies, and even with follow-up phone calls and everything else possibly done to get their correct information, did not have that. So we ended up with 122 actual real contacts. And from that had 37 responses, which gave us a 30%, so far has given us a 30% response rate. And then of those 37, 30 were totally completed and 7 are just partials that have not been completed, which has given us an 80% completion rate. So I think, you know, more importantly than the percentages, I think what I've kind of looked at today was who are the key or kind of critical agencies in the space that haven't completed it or have only completed partials that maybe need to have direct contact and follow up to ensure that they fill those out. I think there's probably 7 to 10 really key agencies that are either unique in their service, so they're not well represented by the other surveys that have been completed, or that they're so critical to the mental health and substance abuse system of care that it would just be really helpful to have their response.
Any discussion? Wendy?
Who's responded? I'm just curious.
You know, I don't have the list pulled up right in front of me, but I'd be happy to send it out. I have a current list I could send out to anyone that's interested to see it right after this meeting.
And actually, I guess more importantly, are there critical players that you haven't heard from that you expected to, and how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, there's probably a handful of those, and to their, you know, giving them the benefit of the doubt, I mean, I always communicated that the survey was due at the end of the week, so they might have time scheduled Friday morning to fill it out. But in response to your question, what I would like to do with those are to make phone calls, direct phone calls to those agencies to, find out, basically make sure they got it, make sure they understand what it is, and ask them to complete it.
Great, perfect.
Any other questions? Jay, are you wanting to?
No, I was just clearing my throat. I'm
Okay.
forming a question. I don't have it all the way figured out yet.
Okay. All righty. So I guess my question would be, Jason, so what's next with the environmental scan?
So following the completion of it, we will be able to compile all of the results and create a report so you could see for each of those service areas, the pie charts or the graphs that for each one to see, so we can start to basically assess what types of gaps exist.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions about the environmental scan?
Do we think that everybody who needed to hear about our survey, we think that we've done a good enough job of letting them know that this is happening, right? I mean, I just worry about that there's somebody out there who's providing service that isn't fully aware of where we're at right now, that we're trying to collect information from them.
Well, Jay, one of the things that happened that was kind of nice about this survey is by sending it out to so many different providers, we found out things that maybe we didn't even initially think were out there. So in sending a survey out to somebody who's in private practice, she contacted me to let me know that her private practice is no longer going, but that she works a full-time position at an agency in town that is developing a new mental health service that will be provided starting in October. So I think we definitely got it out to a lot of people, and there's been a lot of communication back to us. So that's been helpful. But again, I'm happy to send out the list to anyone and maybe just everyone. You can all glance over it. You can see who's responded, who hasn't responded, and you can, if you feel like there's somebody that was left off the list, certainly would like to get it out. And I think our deadline, can be moved if we need to, and we can certainly get responses after Friday if that's beneficial.
One thing, my name was on the actual email along with Jason when he sent the environmental scan out, and I received back interesting comments from, in particular, psychiatrists. They were very eager to let the mental health board know exactly what their practice offers and benefits. Dr. Giacchis is an example. He has a TMS machine, which is the transmatic magnet that alleviates depression and some other significant diagnoses that it's really been applicable, and it's now covered by insurances. And he has like the strongest version. I know that Rosecrans had this machine for years, even before insurance companies approved it. And now that they have a more powerful version, and he wanted us to know about that. And then I had therapists that wanted us to know their specialty in their private practice, exactly what niche, what population they were serving. So a lot of interest, and they took time to kind of elaborate on what they could offer to this community. They want it known. So I think we did find out quite a bit more than we anticipated. So that's an example of positive. The negative, and maybe it isn't negative, but I think two examples that Jason had received questions from Rockford University and then I think Prairie State, you know, they looked at this very concretely in a sense that they don't provide mental health or substance abuse services, but yet they really do at Rockford University because they have a counseling center and they have many students that are in need of these services. So to expand their horizons, to think about what resources in the community may they need for their students in addition to what they provide, it would be very helpful to get them to complete the survey. And the same thing with Prairie State, you know, they're not a mental health provider, but yet they provide legal services for so many people with mental health conditions. So, you know, we just need them to become a part of our network, you know. So it's been an interesting process to say the least. So just little side notes on that. Yeah, Jason.
Yeah, and
What
I
I'm
just,
looking for was-
I would like to, oh, sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Oh, I just was gonna say, that's sort of what I was looking for, is the feel that people had over it.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the two agencies that Marianne mentioned, I think there was some clarifying questions because I don't think that everybody is fully aware of the community support system framework in our community yet. So it became an education opportunity. The survey became an education opportunity to start to present to many of these stakeholders this model and help them understand that what we're looking at are not just the clinical services, but the wide array of services that are needed for people with mental illness and addiction.
Okay, so if there are no further questions on that, Jason, if you want to just take us through the draft charter document, the vision, mission, and principles, and along with your work plan.
I'm happy to do a screen share with that if anybody needs that.
That'd be helpful.
Would you like that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
You know, at this point, I understand that we might be up against the clock a little bit. So I don't know if we want to have discussion about this now. Again, anyone's welcome to give me feedback through an email or a phone call. But the idea was, and I think maybe you gathered from what I sent before, that there was a larger document that had everyone's kind of comments synthesized. So the first step of the process was just to write out everyone's comments in these different question areas, and then start to identify common themes and how things kind of clustered together. And then from there, I just created some draft. Again, these are draft, okay? So draft vision statement, draft mission statement, values, and principles to give you something to react to and see what feels like, yeah, that was what we were talking about, and maybe where something was missed or it didn't quite get worded well. So that's where I'm looking for feedback from all of you. And I think true to really a strong theme throughout it was the importance of engaging lived experience, people who have been in the mental health system, people who are living with mental illness or addiction. And so I think another thing that would be an opportunity that NAMI has offered is they have a group of lived experience folks who could also maybe review this and give us their feedback from their perspective to ensure that none of the statements that maybe we're making well-intended would come across in a way that are stigmatizing or feel not relevant to people who are living that experience. So I would offer that as a potential next step in addition to certainly wanting feedback from all of you.
Yeah.
One thing, go ahead.
No, you go
Well,
ahead.
I added a new statement for awareness that was not on the original document I sent out, so I can update that and send that out. And that was based on some feedback that already came back of maybe having not explicitly stated that I think it's mentioned in the mission statement, but not, or in the vision, but not as much in the values. And then a comment about networks that was coming up in some of the feedback that I didn't originally capture in the principles. I've reworked that and put in a principle statement there. So, you know, the idea in terms of the difference between values and principles is that values is really more about who we are, who this board is, what your identity is, and why you're doing this work, and the things that you believe and how that influences kind of the essence of the board. Whereas the principles are much more about process. These are process statements in a way that they guide kind of how we do the work and what our methodology looks like.
And I guess the only comment that I see Wendy put that she thinks, and I agree with her, that addiction should be added to all of this, mental health and addiction.
Yep. I think that was a great comment that came from Wendy, and I agree that wasn't probably through my own filter, didn't capture that as well as it should be explicitly stated.
Okay.
And I just want to add, and I have it's a question. Do we put addiction or substance abuse? Because one is broader than the other.
Well,
So
yeah, I think with the terminology right now in terms of mental illness or substance use disorders, and that incorporates
good. Yes.
all of them.
Okay. Okay. And I just have to say, Jason, this is awesome. I'm blown away. So thank you.
Yeah, the work you've done is remarkable.
Let me echo
you.
that. Yeah, Jason, great stuff.
Really.
Thank you.
I have a question. I am looking at the principles, and I find the statement about headed equitable to be weak, because it doesn't feel as though we're trying to be equitable in our services, but we're only analyzing them for equity.
So how would you, what would you add, or where would you beef it up?
Well, I think we provide services with equity in mind. I guess, I'm wondering if Jason has some suggestions for that. It just feels to me as though we're talking about, we're not delivering things with equity in mind, but we're just analyzing them. Jason, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. And it may be that the label was not true to the statement. The statement was getting at how we measure results originally without that word equitable. And I put the word equitable there because I thought it was the best description of that statement. But I think to your point, equity is probably not explicitly stated in the other components of the principal statements. And maybe what we could add to that is that we fund and evaluate with equity in mind.
Yes, and maybe instead of saying equitable, we make that heading equity.
And what about adding something about equity under diversity and values?
Yeah, I agree that the values, the diversity statement under the values is also weak. I think it needs to be more explicit about the issues of what does diversity mean? Racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity, I don't know what. That statement doesn't say much to me.
And you could also beef up the client-centeredness, because something about through each individual's cultural lens, how I view something as a white middle-class woman is going to be different than a brown-skinned, impoverished man. you know, so.
You know
maybe
what
look-
I'm going to suggest at this point, rather than to wordsmith all of this right now during this, that everybody needs to send their recommendations to Jason and really do it, because he sent this out. And, you know, I think it's really important that then that way he can change whatever needs to be changed. And then we can really, we had so many things left on the agenda. I'm just afraid we'll be here till 5 o'clock if we start going into each and every, but I agree with you. There are changes that are, you know, really good recommendations are coming forward. So,
and if I could add to that, even more importantly than giving me your feedback, if you have a statement that you feel particularly strong about and want to maybe even think about how you might reword that or how you'd like the statement to be, you know, I'm just, as much as I would like to have every statement kind of meet the thing, I mean, I am aware that it's passing through my own filter and I'm not going to get everyone exactly correct. So I'd really appreciate if you have one you feel really strongly about, just take it, reword it, maybe even give me a suggestion of how that might look.
Julie?
When would you, first question, when Jason, would you like this, or Marianne, when would you like us to have this turned in by?
Well, actually, Jason, it's kind of his timetable. When do you need this?
Well, I was thinking that it would be nice to have this on the agenda for October for approval. And so I think getting all of your feedback in and allowing Danielle to quickly engage her group, you know, if we had every feedback by mid-September, mid to late September, that would be good.
Great. And then my other question, is this then leading us into the rest of the strategic plan? Is this kind of, how will this process flow from here?
The next agenda item is a 35-day work plan. So that will kind of, I think this will kind of be the way that the guiding principles and philosophies of how we do the work. But yes, so I think then it will tie into our work plan and starting to frame what our next steps are.
So will we then have a long range plan, or we're just going on a?
My goal would be that in the next 35 days, we create a 1-year plan, an operational plan, and that one component in that is going to be to create a 3-year strategic plan for the system of care. Okay, but the plan of how we operate is different than that, right? So there's really 2 plans. There's a plan for how we function over the next year, and then there's the plan for the system of care and where we'd like to see improvement.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? So if everyone can get.
Tim has a question.
Oh, Tim.
So one of the things I want everybody to be careful of as they go through this and pick this apart and want to get more specific, a lot of these things, when we leave it more general and more vague and not as strong, it leaves us room so that we can add what we want to add in it. So if we get too specific and too detailed, we may take ourselves out of helping in areas or where we need to be helping in. So I just want you to be careful in doing that.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I had
Go ahead.
just a
Good,
quick
Julie, sure.
follow up to Tim's comment. I think that I agree with Tim in that this is just the very first part of a whole plan process, because we can't, values or beliefs are just how we, and then here in our, how we operate, this is just kind of high level stuff. This is not specific. And so as we go, and that's why I asked the question about our strategic plan, we need to have a more concise strategic plan sooner rather than later. So we can guide, because one of our principles needs to be that we're following our beliefs and our vision and our mission when we're making decisions, not just data.
Right. Okay. All right. Moving on to the 35-day work plan. Go ahead, Jason. You're on mute. Jason?
Okay, thank you. Yes. So getting to Julie's nice segue for me here, so we need to get not only a strategic plan done, but there's another of other components that need done. And what I realized, I think, through the interviewing process and then reflecting on that and putting this together is that while part of this is happening in kind of this linear way where we're thinking about doing strategic plan, RFP, evaluation, and reporting, there's components of these things that need to be happening at the same time. Because while strategic planning is happening, there needs to be some public engagement and communication. And we might, while we're developing the RFPs, already be thinking about how we're going to evaluate so we can write some of that into the RFP process and make sure we have those upfront data agreements and to get the information we want. So I think we need to go through a very quick, I understand, sense of urgency. This is not meant to delay things further, but to help us be very clear and methodical about the way we do our planning process and RFPs. So if we can, over the next 35 days, which would lead us right up to our next board meeting or the October board meeting, assuming we meet the first Tuesday of that month or Wednesday of that month, we can address, essentially create a one-year plan for ourselves, okay? And so what that would include is how are we going to create a 3-year strategic plan for the system of care? What are our RFPs going to look like? What is the process for that going to be? What are we going to measure when we do our evaluation? What evaluation methods might we use? And how are we going to start really doing a public engagement campaign to, I don't know if campaign's the right word, but start doing some communication with stakeholders who want to know what we're doing and with the general public and engage them in the planning process. And then with all of those 4 different subcomponents, then we also need the coordination that's happening between all of them, particularly as it relates to our budget and the service agreement with Region 1 and just having a work plan that we're all operating off of. So based on the interviews with you all and kind of what I gathered to be and what some of you volunteered for to be areas of interest for you, I thought over the next month I could start to engage some of you and your skill sets and your expertise and passion in different areas. And we could come up with, for each of these areas, identify what type of best practices exist, maybe even looking at a couple other mental health boards and seeing how they operate, what we like, what we might need to contextualize or change for our community, what type of dependencies exist. So do we feel that the RFP process is dependent on the strategic plan being done? That's a dependency, right? So then we know as we're scheduling for the year, if this kind of planning is going to take 3 months, the RFP process can't start until that's done. What type of resources are going to be needed in each area? Of course, we need to identify that very quickly if there are any resources that are needed for any of these areas, particularly financial, so that they can be put into the budget, and then just basically codifying all of that into a timeline for a 1-year work plan. And then what that will kind of do in some ways is create a annual cycle that can be repeated over the ensuing years to come, because really, you know, this entire thing is functioning in a yearly cycle that will need to be repeated.
Any questions, comments for Jason? Is everyone comfortable with participating as you see your initials up there.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. Again, Jason, yeah, Julie, go ahead.
Just a real quick technical question. So you'll be contacting us regarding setting up time to do that, or how are we going to proceed with our initialed area?
I would like to contact all of you and set up some phone calls or Zoom conversations that we could get together, and I could download all of your expertise and knowledge, and then start to also do some research and bring that to the table ahead of time so I can present you with some options of things that I've looked at, get your thoughts and feedback, and then put together a draft, probably first starting with each sub area a draft, and then compiling all that into one kind of master plan that would be, I'm hoping, reviewed and voted on at the next board meeting.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this makes sense or not, Jason, but since under each area, planning, RFP, evaluation, and communication, the action items are the same ones. And I'm wondering about your definition or expected outcome after 35 days. If you were to define, say, evaluation, where you and I appear to be, in lockstep here, what would you expect? How would you define evaluation at the end of 35 days that we have gotten to the point of what? A, B, C, D, we have done what? So I'm just, and maybe not for right now, but I'm just thinking that there's some expected work output by the end of 35 days. They're all the same, but in each specific category, how would you define what you're looking for?
So for planning, let me just give you that example, because I don't know if I can spew off the evaluation one as eloquently. So for planning, there's a number of different types of planning models that can be used. And so certain other mental health boards, for example, have used the MAP planning process, which is mobilizing action through planning and partnerships. In our community, we've had a collaborative of healthcare providers and the Regional Health Council and Winnebago County Health Department that have used the MAP process. So for that one, just for example, we might identify that we want to use the MAP process and build off some of that work that's already been done. We might then identify that based on using that process, let's say we think that we could develop a strategic plan for the system of care in a 3-month time period. And that one of the dependencies of that would be that we need to do public engagement, so that we want to coordinate with the communications team to do a public engagement session to review the strategic plan and get feedback. So that would be a dependency and a required point of coordination that we would identify in this kind of master plan, so to speak, or this 1-year plan. And then let's say that we identified for resources that we needed a Zoom link for this public engagement session, and that there was a cost of $200 for a particular tool that was needed, or something like that, just as an example. So that would be the extent of it. And if I could get all that information, then I can put all that into one plan that would show basically over the next year what our expectations are of what we're completing each month and quarter to get this into an annual cycle. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Does that provide clarity?
That's very helpful. I love the fact of being able to use an example. So yeah, for me, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it clarifies a lot. Any other comments, questions about this plan?
I do have a comment, I think.
Okay.
And I think I'm bringing this from dependencies and coordination that needs to be identified. I can tell you that as a member of the Community Relations Commission, they are going to be talking about mental health and how that relates to the police departments, plural, in the area. And that is going to be an actual thing that the Community Relations Commission is going to work on. And the mental health committee, I think that we need to have something to talk to them about when that comes up, because that's going to come up. And I guess I just felt bad if I didn't bring up my issue on every meeting that we have. I don't know. I'm sorry. I would feel like I didn't go to a meeting if I didn't bring it up.
That's all right, Jay.
I know.
We need everyone's advocacy.
But, you know, I am throwing that out there that if we, you know, when you're talking about the mental health board and there's hope out there, and this is one of the issues that people are very interested in because it's played out so publicly among people that aren't even mentally ill. So I'm throwing that out there. And I know that we covered it and it was in sort of a parking lot, but it may have to get out of the parking lot pretty soon. So that's it.
All right. Any other comments? Okay, then we'll move down to the next item, which is the NAMI newsletter public update. And basically,
Marianne, before
Yes.
we move on, does the board feel that you need to vote on this, or do you feel that that's not needed?
okay, that's a good point. Do we feel we need to vote on the work plan? Julie?
I'll move that the work plan be accepted.
I'll second it.
Oh, it isn't really a work plan yet, though, is it? Isn't when we want to vote on the actual work plan as opposed to the structure of just setting up time to start developing the work plan? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter
The
either way.
draft.
And think that it's
Right.
Well, I don't think it matters one way or the other, but since there is a motion on the table to pass, to allow this work plan to be accepted, all those, I need a second.
I second.
A second.
Bill,
Bill.
okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, it passes. Thank you, though. And thank you again for all the work you've done. So moving on to the NAMI newsletter, I'm on the NAMI board, as you all know, and the newsletter is a great place to kind of update the community, the mental health community, and what we're doing as a board. So I asked Jason to put together a letter, or at least an article for that newsletter, and he did. And so it's listed on our agenda today as an action item. So did you put this letter up? I think it went down.
No, I'm sorry, Marianne, that's not the letter. I have not written a specific article
Oh,
yet.
okay, all right.
I was kind of thinking really more about what type of content maybe if we could have some discussion about what type of content we want in there. I think potentially we could update the community a little bit on the environmental scan.
That I think would be so helpful.
And how we're going to then use that to inform strategic planning. And then, I guess would like feedback on what other type of content might be relevant right now.
Well, I think you could also include, which would really be very relevant to the reader of this particular newsletter, that we have tentatively put together vision, mission, and that we are going to call together, consumers from, that would be able to review this to make sure we're in sync with, the person living with mental illness and substance abuse issues. So that would be, in my opinion. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, no, I was going to agree, Marianne, and I don't want to get too far out ahead, but maybe it's not the time, but I would assume there's a hunger out there for when funding will begin to flow.
I think that's true.
And I don't know, you can't, certainly overpromise and under-deliver. That would be a huge mistake, but I don't know if there's anything more generically that can be said that would be very truthful and yet realistic. The community may realize that October is when dollars begin to flow. And I maybe just even for our board's edification, when do we really think that, you
Right.
know, we would have planning in place and evaluation in place enough to begin to issue awards, grants.
I think that is really an important discussion to have. And just based on how our revenue is going to come into us. It's even more important because when we're developing RFPs, we've got to consider, you know, it's promises made, and, you know, some organizations that are smaller, they wouldn't be able to start anything unless they had all of the funding up front. So, you know, for
Right.
bigger agencies, they probably could support a startup, and then with the anticipation that the money would come in during the course of the year. So we have to, you know, that's a consideration for us too, and not knowing how many dollars are actually going to be coming in the first couple of months. It's hard to, you know, that's why I said we're going to have to kind of watch for a couple of months to see what we receive. Yeah.
I would I'm sorry.
The truth is they started collecting this tax July 1. So in fact, I wonder if there isn't already 2 months of revenue on the books that we could look back at, that we could ask Steve Chapman about.
Well, he's told us every time we've discussed it that really the revenue will not come in until October. He's never.
Well, no,
said-
but I
Yeah.
understand that my understanding is it's received quarterly, but apparently he said monthly, but they've been collecting it for July and August, whether we have it or not.
But
It's a different question. And I wonder if that wouldn't help inform our planning.
But the state's been collecting it. We wouldn't know anything until October 1.
Okay. So really, first of the year is probably even then wishful thinking.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're all touching on what I think is really critical. And I'm thinking of back to the NAMI newsletter item on the agenda. So, and I'm no public relations expert, but this will all become public pretty quickly. So whatever is said in the NAMI newsletter could get picked up by the media.
Oh, absolutely.
Once October hits, the media will be, it might be you, Marianne, that they'll be coming to call on, but they'll want a statement of, so I'm just pleading for all the statements to all be consistent relative to what we think is a realistic timeframe.
And realistically, right now, today, even discussing this, it's public. I mean,
Right.
so the reality is that, you know, when we know as a board, the public will know just based on what is reported at our meetings.
Yes.
So I do think there's a lot of transparency to this, but it does make it very difficult to plan and make promises for dollars, because that may be a deterring factor for some agencies or providers to even step forward to want to apply, knowing that the money may not all be there at the beginning. That's all I'm saying. So I think that will be a determinant as to when we think we have what the right timing will be. Yeah, Julie first and then Jason.
I think that at this point in writing a NAMI newsletter, that we share the process of how we're going to eventually be distributing the dollars. So we can't give it a date. We can't say maybe the first of the year. I'm not comfortable putting any dates out there.
Right, I
But
agree
to
with that.
Bill's point, I think that we need to discuss in the article the process we're taking. We're putting together our mission, our process. How do we do it so that it's a fair and consistent process for everyone? And then as soon as we have that information, we'll be putting it out to the public. I think that's what you say at this stage of the game.
I agree with that.
I agree.
So Jason, do you have enough to go on at this point for the letter or the article?
Yes, I think I like the idea of talking about the process. I understand that, especially as annual budgets are being formed, people will want to know when money is being issued.
Yeah,
And that's why I think we need to quickly get these different components of how we're going to, operate over the next year identified. But I think we can have that, done by October, just not before the NAMI newsletter. So if we talk about process, and then in October, we could probably, discuss how we're going to publicly release and talk about our kind of year plan and our strategic planning process, our RFP process, and what we believe the timeline will be for that.
Okay.
And I really want to keep emphasizing in the community that we're looking for, we're trying to prioritize how we're going to respond to the unmet needs. And we're still in that process. So we haven't explicitly said that, but I think that is implicit in everything we've done so far is we're trying to be the gap filler.
Bill?
Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree completely. And what Julie said got me thinking too. And I think, in putting this statement together, which it will be public, of course, the heart behind it, rather than just process, is that this board takes this responsibility very seriously. And the message, I don't know that I would say it this way, that it's not about speed, but it's about getting it right.
Yes.
And I think there's a way to word that the complexity of the process, the board takes the responsibility very seriously, and we don't have, whether we say we don't have a time frame now or not, I think Jason could do a great job putting it together, but emphasizing the seriousness of it to sort of send the message. It's not completely about speed, it's about getting it right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have it as an action item. So does it require an approval of the content for this article? Jason, is that what?
I just put it on there in case we needed to vote about something specifically with it, but I don't know that it's required. We didn't really make a final action as far as
I
I'm
don't think we
concerned.
need a vote yet.
No. But
I think you can agree that it is appropriate to write something in the newsletter.
correct. And the deadline for this will be before, well, it's September 24th. I think I told you that. Or no, I can't even remember the date now. September 11th, maybe, was the deadline when she needed to have it. So that's why I think you put it as an action, that if the board felt a need to approve the content and, basically receive the content from the board. So I don't know if there is an action item here. Bill?
And I apologize for perseverating over this, but
No, that's all right.
I think it's important. I guess what I started to think of now is when should we consider, not, and we wouldn't be able to decide today, but should we consider a proactive release, a statement, maybe from the board under your name, Mary Ann, from the board to the media sometime in early October, rather than waiting for them to content. I don't know if that's a good idea or not yet.
I do think
I always, in my previous life, I always like to preempt. If you could control the conversation by preempting it to some degree, that seemed to be better than allowing the media to kind of co-opt the message. So it's just something to think about.
Well, I agree with that. Julie, you have a thought?
I think that, I think the newsletter is a good way just to put information out there about what we're doing, the process we're taking, how we think it's so serious. And then right before the money comes out in October or whatever, we get released the money, I think there has to be a statement at that point that's more specific about what it is the board is doing. Because I agree, we don't want them coming to us and say, what are you going to do with all this money now?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do this with the money. So I think it's kind of a two-step process here.
Exactly. I think that's very important to get that communication out there, because people have all sorts of ideas how they want us to spend the money, like, oh, my grandmother needs therapy sessions, or, you know, all these kind of really just, you know, it's rather than looking at it as a change in the system of care, they're looking at paying for individual services for, you know, people. So it's going to be important to communicate the big picture right as soon as we can possibly can. So I think that's something we should talk further about too. Okay, so moving on, just because these next two are important to get your opinion. The youth mental health system of care, the group that presented to us last month, they shortly realized that the original Children's Foundation that they applied for the planning grant has been trying to get a hold of someone at Rosecrans that's no longer at Rosecrans, because they really wanted to, again, encourage this group to apply for the planning grant and also implementation of, you know, some of their recommended action steps. So I received a call from Pam Clark Reidenbach, and she asked if the Mental Health Board would be willing to send a letter of support to the Illinois Children's Foundation because we are a potential funder. And I really wanted to clarify with her that we were in no position to send a support letter in terms of potential funding. But what we thought we could do is send a support letter in support of their application. Just because we would be, you know, in many, we'd have a lot of credibility, it would help them, and that's what they had requested. So we knew we weren't meeting till today. And I think they've already sent in their grant without our letter whatsoever. But I told them, and Jason actually had the conversation. So Jason, you may want to just pipe in here because you talked and let them know that we weren't sending the letter before the board meeting. So go ahead.
Yeah, I guess what's unique about this particular grant is that it would provide funding for their collaborative to continue doing research on and meeting around improvement of the children's system the youth system of care for mental health. And so, you know, I looked also to the Community Mental Health Act to see what was kind of stated in there about these type of parallel planning processes that might exist to community mental health boards. And what the Community Mental Health Act says is that the mental health boards consult with other appropriate private and public agencies in the development of local plans for the most efficient delivery of mental health, developmental disorders, and substance abuse disorder services. So what the language of a potential letter basically just says that's what the Community Mental Health Act directs community mental health boards to do. And therefore, if this grant were awarded, that we feel like it would provide an opportunity for collaboration with the mental health board's planning process.
Yes, Tim. You're on mute. Okay.
So this wasn't something that they needed us to do in order to get the grant?
No.
Because I know, like, so they could just get the grant without it.
Well, they don't know that they're getting the grant. I mean, they're.
I'm just saying, is this something that they could apply for without us? Because I know.
Oh yeah.
You know, with us being a mental health board, you know, I know we got funding through the sales tax, but we're also capable of applying for these grants that the other facilities need, and you know, they can't get those grants without us. So I was just making sure that this wasn't one of those grants that they needed us for.
It is not.
Okay.
It's a collaborative grant between the planning, the youth services planning system of care and Rosecrans, because, you know, they needed providers and they needed an infrastructure. So actually, I think Rosecrans is going to be the applicant. And then, am I right about that, Jason?
Yeah, essentially they just needed a lead agency, and all of the members of the collaborative were involved. It was just simply somebody had to be the lead, and Rosecrans had probably the best infrastructure to provide that support. But it's not any type of direct service. It's really a systems improvement type thing. It's about collaboration and research and capacity building for all of these organizations that make up our youth system of care.
Yes, Bill.
You know, I hate it that my mind goes in this direction, but you know, so let's say they don't get the grant, and it doesn't sound like our letter is pertinent anymore, but even for future. So we agree to endorse with other third-party funders, and they don't get the money. Does it seem like we've given somebody a leg up by voicing our affirmation? And I loved what they presented to us, and it seems like it's wonderful work and thoroughly supportive. But I guess I'm just thinking, do we lay some sort of groundwork that we then have someone has a leg up with us with the funding we have to grant, because we've already expressed publicly approval? I don't know. I guess I just thought of that possibility.
Yeah. I mean, Julie, you have something to add?
I agree with Bill in what he said, and I would add that lacking any process of how we would do that for anybody, I'm not really comfortable sending a letter because they came and present to us. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that they don't deserve it, but until we have processes in place for all this, that might be something we need to include in our plan then. If we're going to be endorsing people, whether we give them money or not, I think we need to have parameters of how we do that.
Yeah. And Julie, just to trail on that, and of course, you know, the respect I have for Rosecrans is boundless, but them being there, you know, it really wasn't clear whether they were just a fiscal agent where the money flows to them and then flows through them and they're just a pass through, or they're also receiving supportive dollars to make this happen. That then begins kind of increases the universe of what our support would mean with such a letter. So I agree with what Julie just said. I think we have to be very careful and have a good filter for these things when and if we do them.
And Linda?
Yeah, I just want to say that I absolutely agree, and I don't know how we make a process for this, but it may be that we don't do it, you know. So United Way is a funder. I did write a letter for them of support for them, not promising them funding, but saying that it's an important effort in the community. But there are so many organizations out there, as we know, that we could be writing 10 letters a month for grant funding.
Yeah. Well, it seems the consensus is that we don't go forward with this. And Wendy?
I think part of the communication team's responsibility over the next 30 days is to develop at least sort of a preliminary framework to talk about when we do things that are public beyond our meetings, like as in letters, and when we contact the media and who's responsible, and sort of have a process proposal for the board to look at by the next board meeting. I think that's pretty important, you know, and then we can flesh it out. But right now, I don't know, just that. I'm neutral on whether you send the letter or not.
And if we even do that, as Linda was saying, that may be something we don't
Right.
do. We're a funding source. We have to draw our line as to what we are here for.
And all we did is bring it to the board in this discussion. It's been very helpful. And I think we have our answer. The majority of people are not comfortable. So I think we can just move on. that was simple. Okay, so now the last thing I have, well, it's not the last thing, but Mercy Health, as you know, is having a hearing actually tomorrow. And we as a board agreed and did send a letter requesting of the public hearing. And Mercy, obviously, at this point, as I read it, they closed the unit, but actually they suspended until they get permission. And with further investigation into the process, talking to people at the Health Facility Board, there has been a law passed by the Illinois Hospital Association that if a hospital with psychiatric beds goes through the procedure, completes the application, and follows all the rules, that generally speaking, the Health Facility Board will agree with them and will not, will not change their decision on this matter. So I think that's important for all of us to know up front, but it doesn't mean that there's not a real active effort on behalf of, I know for fact, NAMI is going to be at the hearing. They're going to also be outside the hearing. And it isn't the actual board members that will be at this hearing tomorrow. It's the hearing officer that will be taking all the information in. Unlike when I testified for the Singer closing, there were the actual board members that we testified before. But that's not how this hearing tomorrow is going to be handled. So I think, since we did ask, this is my own personal opinion, and that's why I'm bringing it up here. I would like to have some comments. You can either join the WebEx and give your comments that way. You can give your comments in person. It's at the Nordlof Center downtown tomorrow at 2:00. Or the other option is to submit written comments. And Jason did put together some comments that we could possibly consider approving for tomorrow and submitting them orally, or written, I should say, if you're inclined to do so. So Jason, do you have that information?
Yeah, and let me just state, I saw that Dr. Morris needs to jump off the call at 4:00 here, and we will no longer have a quorum when she leaves. So if we're going to vote on this, it would need to be before then. So there's a draft letter. I don't know if anybody had a chance to review it. I
did.
Do you want me to read part of it? Or
yeah, why don't you
anybody
quickly do that?
Okay, I'll try to read it as fast here. Dear Review Board, the Winnebago County Mental Health Board is disheartened by Mercy Health's request and subsequent actions to close their mental health beds. We find this inconsistent with mental health trends and community need. A growing body of evidence suggests increasing rates of mental illness. For example, depression among Medicare users has increased from 15.28% to 17.93% from 2011 to 2017 on a national level, and from 16.11% to 17.93% in Winnebago County. From 2004 to 2016, suicide mortality rates have increased more than 20% nationally and more than 30% in the state of Illinois. Children's mental health trends are also concerning, with suicide rates for children ages 10 to 14 tripling from 2007 to 2017. While mental illness was already on the rise prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, recent research suggests greater psychological distress during the pandemic for people with serious mental illness, a trend which can be predicted to increase the number of psychiatric crises and, in turn, the need for mental health hospital beds. These trends suggest a need for more community mental health beds, not less. In fact, research has demonstrated the need for 50 psychiatric beds per 100,000 people, with only 34 available beds in the region. Before Mercy's recent closure, this would only adequately support an adult population of less than 100,000 people. In absence of adequate community beds, individuals with psychiatric crisis fill up our emergency rooms, jails, and prisons. And then there's a community needs section. Consistent with mental health trends, Mercy has seen an increase in admissions for acute mental illness to 593 admissions in 2018 from 570 in 2015. It is only because the average length of stay has decreased that the average daily census has decreased. It would be troubling to think that the length of stay was being influenced intentionally to show a decreasing trend to support a preempted request for closure. Yet it is hard to understand how this request fits with Mercy's own assessment of community need. According to Mercy Health's fiscal year 2021 community benefit plan, a key area of community need includes improving the behavioral health status of community members with a noted tactic to continue to provide inpatient and outpatient medicine service to area residents. It is worth noting that Mercy Health's North Rockton Avenue campus does not reside in a designated health professional shortage area for mental health. While we understand the overall difficulty of attracting psychiatrists to the region, we find it unconvincing that this is an impossible task or a legitimate reason for closing down a much needed service in our community. We ask that you please take into consideration the preceding information and rule in favor of keeping these much needed beds in our community.
I like it.
So what we need is a motion to approve.
I can make a motion to approve that.
Okay, we need, I think we have to have it from Tim. Okay, go ahead. Second, Julie.
Yeah, and I told them I'd be a couple minutes late, so we
Oh,
don't have to.
thank you. Okay,
What's this?
any discussion? Bill.
Well, just before Julie hops off, the one sentence about it would be troubling to think that length of stay was being influenced intentionally to show a decreasing trend to support a preemptive request for closure is a powerful statement. I don't know that we have any evidence of that. Healthcare systems just in general over the years have attempted to decrease length of stay, and that can be appropriate. I don't know that we know that here. It's, I thought the letter was fantastic when I read it, but as I read that again, that's, and you know, if I could just make one comment, I think, Marianne, what you're referring to is I think closure of services now falls under what's called the certificate of exemption in the state of Illinois. When Singer was closed, that was a certificate of need, I believe. That required.
That's correct.
Certificate of exemptions for even opening and closing specific services within they have a much lower hurdle to pass.
Yes, I agree.
To jump over. So I think your opening comments about this could be a fait accompli could very well be true. Doesn't mean we don't want to be strong, and because the public is out there talking about it, the mayor's talking about it. But that one sentence, I would be actually okay if it stays in. I just want to raise a little bit of an antenna about it because it can be done at times appropriately to attempt to manage length of stay.
Well, I would heed your advice, given your position at Swedish American Hospital. So, Jason, do you think that the letter would remain powerful enough without that particular sentence?
I think if the sentence is not based in the best evidence, then we should remove it. And I think with Dr. Gorski's addition of his experience, that probably is appropriate to remove it. Dr. Gorski, I would maybe like clarification also, if you know offhand the number of beds, if that was accurate. 34, I had a number that showed Swedes had a peak number of beds of 20, and I don't know if I understood correctly if that means that's the total adult beds they had is 20.
You know, I don't
know offhand. Okay.
I do not know, because I know then there's the adolescent beds, so I don't know what the breakdown is.
Well, that is the number that I had in the documentation I received, so I assume that's correct.
I want to add though, because I personally like that statement, and there have been statements by staff on the unit indicating that there had been this that while Mercy made comments about, I don't remember what the number was, 5 beds used over a period of the last year. In fact, they were holding people in the emergency room for days trying to stabilize them rather than admitting them. So there
You
is
know what, though, we
evidence.
get into danger in that. That's more
Do we?
anecdotal. I think
Right.
what we want to do is really, I think the letter is great and we can remove that one. It still remains a pretty powerful statement from
I
us.
think it does too. And you could, I mean, you suppose you could say it would be troubling if that, not to think that, but if that length of stay was being, that's a little
Well,
bit different to think.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
you can modify it a little bit, and because it is troubling to think that that could be it. And I didn't mean to complicate it by saying it at times reductions of length of stay are appropriate, even they're care appropriate for the person. So I could be good either way. I might wordsmith it just a little bit. I agree with Wendy, though. It's a powerful statement. I'd feel a little better if it said it would be troubling if that length of stay was being influenced intentionally, rather than to think that. That's kind of like we're musing about it. We're,
Right.
you know, without evidence, we're musing about it, which I don't know.
I think they'll
You
still,
form it into a question?
I think that it's, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think that it's still, if we don't have the evidence, even to say it would be difficult, you know, it'd be whatever to think that, well, that's still us accusing them of doing it. So
Yeah.
I think that before we even, you know, we need to be strong, but I don't want to make statements that we don't have evidence to support. And to say that people on the floor were saying that, that's not real evidence. That's
No, you gotta be careful.
An anecdote, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay with asking it as a question. Just form it as a question, so let them answer it. Because because I think that their actions, it's legitimate. It's a legitimate question. You know, the way they've conducted themselves in this community, and I like the strength of the letter, and I don't mind asking somebody. If you ask them, they say no, and they can explain things.
Yeah, but they're not going to be there to say no. I mean, the board, we're trying to convince the board of what we know, given the data that we've, you know, kind of gotten off the websites and, you know, what they proclaimed. So I'd rather stick with everything, you know. I agree with Julie 100%. I think we really have to have something that is very credible and that we know to be true. So
and it's not these things aren't debates. There's a hearing officer and said there's no point counterpoint. You read in your statement. I will say that I do now know that Swedish American will be filing as well a letter of objection. So you won't be surprised by that tomorrow. But it's not a debate. Marianne, you know, you've been to them and you just make your statement and
that's it. You're done.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. So Jason, do you, just leaving that out, we have a motion to accept.
I can edit the letter. I think maybe the other thing we could include in this motion would be, how are we presenting this? Is somebody going to physically go and read this, or are we like submitting it?
I thought we were just going to submit our comments to the health facility board in written form.
How do we procedurally do that?
Are you willing to go to the hearing? I mean,
yeah, I'm willing to. I'm not suggesting that. I guess I'm just asking really how you would like to.
How does the board
submit
feel
these?
about that?
Yeah.
I would just raise the technical issue if it's tomorrow, making it sure it gets in their hand before the clock strikes whatever, and they say we're not going to take any more comments. So at this point, I don't know if it simply needs to be hand delivered and set on a desk or read in, but I'm just raising because I don't know the technicalities of that at this late of a time.
I think, you know, the hearing is from 2 to 6, 4 hours. It's a long period of time. I was not planning to go down there to that group and you know, they were going to let 20 people in and then let people out as more people came in. I was going to do this WebEx, but I just registered to not speak, but to watch.
I can follow up with Danielle. I feel like she may have she may know who's speaking and
Danielle did
involved with that?
organize all this. She's out of town and she will not be there herself. She is
Okay.
going to do it by WebEx.
Do you have any idea, does anybody,
I plan on
how
being
many
there
people
tomorrow.
would be there?
Oh, do you hear?
I mean,
Tim
so
said
it's-
he's gonna be there.
Good.
Oh. Okay.
And I saw that it's going to be 20 people at a time. Do you anticipate it? How many people are going to be there? Will it be 20 people and you'll be done, or?
I really don't know. They're not going to let everybody in at the same
Right.
time. So
Do you
they'll-
have any idea, Bill, how much something like this how many people it would draw?
I don't, Linda. You know, it's been a while since, and blessedly because it's like fingernails on a blackboard. My recollection is you show up and you sign in.
Yeah.
And you sign in order and you speak in order of which you signed in. So I think it seems like there's a lot of appropriate community concerns. So there could be a fair number of people there, but I don't know any better way to predict that.
Well, maybe
You're
Tim
right.
could read the letter in on behalf of. the
Well,
board.
that's what I was going to say, if he'd be willing to do that, if he's going.
I'm willing to.
That'd be great.
It'd be wonderful.
So Jason, you can get that letter to him, okay? That'd be great.
Yes.
And exactly what you said, you did not register if you're going in person. It's first come, first serve.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. So Julie, in thinking of the next item would be other matters. Are there any other matters?
Can you
for
just
the board?
you can vote on
Do
that?
we need to vote on this?
Oh, I am so sorry. Yes, we do.
And then I'll jump off after that.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah,
wait, we need a date for next week for the budget
Yeah.
meeting.
real quickly, we'll do this. So we have a motion to accept the letter being read in tomorrow for Mercy. And so who was the motion? I can't remember. Maybe
I'll
we didn't
motion.
have a motion. Yeah.
No, I
Julie?
don't remember who it was.
All right. All right.
And a
We
motion.
have a second.
I'll second. Tim first did it.
Tim and then
Mercy.
Julie. Thank you.
Oh,
And then any discussion, any more discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Okay. And then other matters? I have nothing to bring up. Oh, Tim?
I was just gonna bring up, I know previously when we first started the mental health board, we were talking about trying to have a retreat to try to get stuff going. And I know with a lot of the restrictions being lifted, I don't know if the board was willing to try to go ahead and try to plan that if it was a need for it. And I just wanted to bring it back up just in case we thought we needed to do something like that. Even in-person meetings, I know the county board has started to have some committee meetings in person. So that just may be something we may want to consider in the future. Don't leave it out the option out, just to help get work done. So if we need to have in-person or committee meetings, as long as we don't think there's a big public showing gonna be there. And right now, with us being in the Zoom meetings, not too many people of the public have been trying to participate in our meetings, and not too many people go back and watch YouTube after it's been posted. So I don't think we're gonna have a large showing of public. So if we wanna consider any in-person or retreat, that may be something we want to discuss later.
Well, I do have a comment to that. I am not willing to do this in person. I would
That's no
still
problem.
request a Zoom, but those that feel strongly about it wouldn't, I certainly would not stand in the way. But I am not attending any meetings at this point in time, personally. So,
And I think that's fair to respect everybody's wishes. So if one doesn't want to, I think we should be fair to everybody. And say,
well, it's really, the majority rules on this. So, certainly you could get together. Yes, Bill.
But you're our chair, so I would support you. I haven't done it yet either. I think there's one thing I'm on that maybe in a couple weeks is going to do it, socially distance in a very open room. I'll probably do it, but I think we should stand together on this.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think with the plan of the 45-day plan, a lot of that, of course, is going to be done through Zoom meetings. So I really don't think we'd have a need necessarily for a retreat before all of that is accomplished. So, you know, let's hope 45 days will take us to a new place. We don't know, but, you know, certainly I respect, you know, everyone's desire to get together, and those are.
Mary Ann, I support Zoom, so I think we should err on the side of caution.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, and then one final thing under other matters. I have one suggestion for this meeting next week, the 10-minute meeting or whatever, and it would be Friday in the morning, anytime in the morning. Would that work for other people? I had one board member that did say that would be a good time. It'd be a fine time for me. What about, and Jason, would that work?
Well, yeah, it works for me. The one thing I wanted to suggest, and I know that the county IT is off, but when I spoke to Ian, you know, who was scheduling these meetings, he said that because he does so many evening meetings, that his hours start at 11. And I just want to make sure the county has good coverage for posting the Zoom link. Of course, we could always schedule that here, but I don't know that we've gone through the formality of switching that over yet. So if morning includes 11 o'clock, that might just be better. That's the only
That would be fine.
caveat
Because
suggesting.
it's only going to be a brief meeting. And so far, what we do know is that the IT quote and the legal quote, and also the R1, what, you know, going forward, what the contract will remain as is, and it's the number of hours we choose to use up to a maximum number, which is well under the 15,000 a month. So I think that can easily be put in the budget without, you know, challenge. So Wendy, if you could get Bill, when I think Ed had to leave, he did.
Yeah,
And
he
so what do you think?
We were texting Mary Ann. I think he'll reach out back to me at some point. 11 on Friday works for me. So assuming it works for Ed, then he and I'll just get together at some point before then.
Okay, that sounds great. But when do you want the information from people that are getting quotes? What would be?
Well, Monday's Labor Day, I suppose.
Wednesday?
Wednesday'd be great. The only other one you didn't mention, maybe you did and I missed it, would be the board, the director and liability insurance.
Well, the insurance quote too.
I'll look at what Carrie Lynn pays for. It's basically an errors and omissions kind of insurance. And Jason, you are already covered by R1 liability insurance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's really just director's insurance. I'll get a number from Kathy, because I think that's maybe a similar kind
Directors
of
and
number.
directors and officers as and then errors and omissions are
Right.
two separate types of insurance, but yeah, probably both of those.
Right.
I don't know that.
It's yeah, but at least to have some number to throw out there.
And Jason has sources. He can
Right.
get quotes, so
Right.
that would be helpful. Kind of.
I don't know if general liability would be necessary. I guess the only thing would be if the board hosted some type of public engagement session and somebody came and tripped on the sidewalk or something like that.
Right. Well,
It
that's
might
the
at least be worth.
insurance people.
That'd be general liability. Yeah.
Right.
I think a
But-
carrier would be able to advise you, Jason.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
you raised earlier the point that this is a $13 million enterprise, which also extends the potential scope of liability, which changes the premium, frankly. So, I mean, with whatever context you have, that information, they should be able to give us some good advice.
And remember, we are directing how the money we think the money should be spent. ultimately, it's the county board who's making the decision. So it's just, I think that lowers our window of liability in all of this.
We
And we're
never-
not
We don't touch
workers.
the money.
Right. So anyway, so Jason, and I'll talk to you too, and we'll see.
Okay, just so you know, the
Sounds good.
deadline is Wednesday if all possible. Okay, so could I have a motion for adjournment?
Make the motion.
Tim and Bill second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Have a wonderful Labor Day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, take care.